Svitlana! It is the first episode of 2024 with Svitlana's Smart Moves. What are the smart moves we have to prepare for 2024?
Yes, I'm really happy to be back. We all know that the Tata Steel tournament right now is taking place with some of the best players in the world, and there's some amazing games there. But I thought that as everybody is analyzing these games, I thought we could do a little throwback to one of the best games from the last year's Tata Steel, which featured a very interesting opening and lots of tactics. It's between two rising stars, Gukesh and Praggnanandhaa,
Oh, nice.
and it would be interesting to see what their duel looks like this year. But this is the one
Indeed.
that was really memorable for me from the previous Tata Steel because I thought everybody would analyze this year's Tata Steel games already. So we'll do a little throwback today.
Love it. Yeah, perfect idea. And we can always learn from analyzing so much as you at home do already. If you are curious about the game, want to replay it, put it in your database, whatever, you know the drill. Go to the ChessBase news page, go to this article. It's in the link below the video, and there you have it. All right, let's take a
Let's do
look.
it.
So
Let's do
it
it.
was
So
Gukesh versus Pragg. So, oh, c4,
it
c5
started
already.
off with it starts off with c4, but after a few moves, it transposes
Hmm.
into something that looks completely different. As we can see, this looks more like the Sicilian after white plays
True.
e4. Although
Totally.
Gukesh went for a3 first, just to prevent any bishop b4 ideas here.
Yeah.
So this would be a little bit of a less favorable setup against the Sicilian as white. So that's why he goes for a4 just to prevent it and to make sure the bishop doesn't go there. And we can see it looks like Sicilian structures because white's d pawn got exchanged for the c pawn, even though it came from a completely different opening. Then, after castling, Gukesh plays a very interesting move, knight to f3. So it might look a bit strange at first, but do you see the idea behind it?
No.
It's a preventative, it's a preventative idea, so it's against d5. So
Oh, okay.
otherwise, if let's say white just keeps developing the pieces, then there would just be a lot of trades going on, and it's kind of just trading everything off in the center, which is probably not what he wanted to do, and they both
Yeah.
wanted to go for more of a fight. So that's why he retreats the knight, just so that d5 is not really
What
possible
a
in the next few moves.
grandmaster move.
Then queen a5 happens. So black is just bringing out the pieces, and so is white. And after queen h5, this is probably the reason why this game has actually caught my attention, and the reason why I remembered it clearly is because of this next move of white. Try to
I
guess it.
think I remember it too now, since, yeah, it is a typical Arne move. I think it's g4.
Almost,
Oh, it's
almost.
h4.
No, no.
Oh, no, that, no,
It's I said it's almost g4 because it's something preparing g4.
Ah, so it's h3.
No, not h3 either.
Is it bishop e2?
No,
It gets
but all of these
worse.
make sense. All of the ones you've said, I'm pretty sure any normal person would have this idea. The thing is, h3 doesn't really prepare g4 because then they can just take it.
That's not
Um,
okay.
and bishop e2, probably the most normal move that I would probably make as well. But then d5 happens, which is the idea we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And then
Ah.
black just gets to trade everything in the center, and it's just a little more boring of a position than I guess he wanted. So how else do we prepare g4? That's why
How
I'm saying
else
this
do
move
we
is,
prepare
I
g4?
would have never guessed it probably if I haven't seen the game before.
Okay. Ah, it is rook g1.
Exactly,
My
rook
goodness,
g1.
last resort. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
rook
that's
g1.
cool.
But it looks so strange. I'm not sure if it
Yes.
was prepared or anything. It's not the best move. The best moves were the ones like bishop e2, like bishop f4, just giving like equality. But this one is a bit of a like strange move that we don't see too often, but we obviously see the idea. It is to play g4.
Hmm.
And the reason why he plays it is because black essentially has only one plan. Black's only plan is to play this d5 move, or well, the best plan that he knows that his opponent was going for. And the reason is that on d5, he doesn't have to trade in this case, and he can just go straight for his idea with g4. So it just makes things more complicated after this d5 move that almost certainly led to all of these simplifications
Certainly.
afterwards. Do you think you would ever go for something like this in your game as white?
So the new me would probably think about it, but I would probably also be too scared to do something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Easily said.
So
It's
you've evolved into a more safe player.
I'm maybe a little more, yes. Yeah.
It's okay.
I
You'll
think I've
find
evolved to a
soon enough you'll
scarier.
find a balance, I think,
Yeah.
between your, attacking side and like your safe side.
Okay.
I hope so. So basically, after this, Black had to take, or else the queen just has nowhere else to go and it can even get trapped after this.
No.
So they had to take. And after these simplifications, it's not really that simple because the knights also don't get traded and White's knight gets to come to d5. So,
Okay.
so far it looks good until you see Black's next move. It is bishop to c5. And I don't know about you, but here, just looking at it at first glance, I would think that, oh, White is just losing.
Yeah.
White is losing something here. How would you evaluate the position and try to find the only move here for White?
Well, okay, let's evaluate. So this open or half open G line is not as effective yet, but it is still some threat which could be bigger at one point.
For
Of
sure.
course, F2 is super unpleasant. There's very little ways to defend it well. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing which comes to mind would be bishop e3, but that
For
cannot
sure.
be because it's too simple.
Yeah, for sure. Bishop
So,
e3 is one of
yeah.
those moves that is the most obvious one you see to defend pawn, but there is something else and something more productive that is a bit.
Yeah, this is why the rook g1 was played in the first place, to go to g2.
Actually, it does come to g2 later. The rook does come there later.
Funny.
But I'll
But it
tell
is
you,
not okay. Wow.
there's a different defense which um you don't look at at first glance, but I'll tell you a hint that we can use this file.
Wow.
Or
Is
maybe
it
that's a bad hint
that
because
is yeah, but is it knight to f6 check?
somewhere, not right now, but exactly this knight f6 idea. So
Wow.
basically, we can play queen to e2, and
Jeez.
that indirectly, like it defends
Oh
this
my
pawn.
goodness, now I see it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, that's
Yes,
beautiful.
exactly. So you see that after this, what do we have?
Well, we take with the queen now.
Exactly. And this is the variation that you mentioned with knight f6, which is why, look, you see like one part of the tactic that might be there,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to
As
find
so
a way to
often.
implement it.
How
So
cool.
that's a really cool defense against bishop f2,
Yes.
something you don't see, immediately.
No,
But I'm sure that Gukesh saw this like before this position appeared on the board because otherwise f2 square just looks really scary. But
most
something like
likely.
this is, of course, good for white, his upper piece. So one of the coolest defenses of the f2 squares here, but
Totally.
of course, the game still continued because Praggnanandhaa is not going to take it and fall for this trick. He played f5. He goes for a counterattack and defends against that knight f6 idea.
My
And
gosh.
here there's
What a
another
game.
only move, and it is quite difficult to know what to do in such situations. But do you think we should go more for a defensive or a counterattacking?
Well, generally, what I learned is if you have the chance to respond to an attack with a counterattack, it's the most effective way. So I would try to counterattack. I don't know, maybe. What about Queen c4, for example?
Queen c4 is well, the thing is, I was gonna say that it's a good idea for the counterattack, but then there's bishop here that I'm,
Can I not just go?
yeah.
No,
And
oh
then
my god, it's also discovered.
the king has to go somewhere.
Yes, you're right. And then the queen is gone. That's
Which
so
queen?
the white queen. So if the white queen goes to c4, it's a check on f2. Well, no matter
Right.
where the king is going. Oh, wait, we have a knight. Sorry.
You thought that there was
It's not a
93?
discovered. Yeah, yeah, it's not. We
Yeah,
can
no,
just
it's
take
okay.
the
But
knight.
I guess I see that knight f6 is a threat. So maybe if black defends it for like one more move, and then kind of everything is falling apart here
Yeah.
on this diagonal and the rook as well. So it wouldn't be queen c4. Um, but you're right, that in such tense tactical positions, we always need to make more concrete moves. Ideally, we try to make checks, captures, threats, anything of that sort. And here, of course, we are looking at threats. And something like knight f4 is a good way to get the queen away from a good square and to just keep your pieces more coordinated. And so that's kind of in terms of the approach usually, even though we look at like very specific variations and moves, but I always try to take away like some sort of like general rule from it. And the lesson from this game, I think it's more that although defense is sometimes needed, always if there is a counterattacking alternative, always look at that one first before making a defensive move. Because defensive moves, they're of course necessary, but they don't necessarily pose like a problem for the opponent to solve. So he's just going to continue the attack, and he doesn't have to like really be careful or choose something specific. And we always want to like maximize our chances and the chances for the opponent to make a mistake. So that's something that you try to do. But of course, this one is a bit of a crazy position. So it might not always apply. But this is here. The thing is, Gukesh actually went for a defensive move, rook g2. But it would have been better to continue with something counterattacking like knight g5. So, for
Yeah, that
example,
looks very
here,
good. Queen can only go
Black
to...
has to choose, where the queen goes.
Yeah.
Something like this could be met with even a long castle, and we would have a really nice position with the opposite side kings, and both sides would try to start an attack, and there would be lots of tactics to come. Somewhat of an unclear position, but really interesting because this knight here is actually not hanging.
Yes,
Well, it is
exactly.
hanging,
Yeah,
but
it
we
is,
just get
but yeah,
we just get a piece back.
yeah.
So
Wow.
that's just a little detail here. So it would have been better to maintain the initiative with knight g5, but he went for rook g2. And Black could have taken over the initiative with f takes e4, which he didn't actually do. It would, of course, still be really, really complicated. But he went for a different approach with queen to e7. And here is probably one of the most like important decisions that he had to make in the game. So try to find what white needs to do here.
I'm just trying to figure out like what was their time by now. Probably both had like little minutes left on the clock.
It's only move 16.
Yeah, exactly. And
It's only move 16, but sometimes
crazy.
that's what happens.
Wow. So yeah, there's 1,000 options, it feels like. One of the most... What are the most obvious ones? There's not even like a super obvious one. Knight d5, queen c4 check. Is there something very clever which I didn't spot yet? What about you at home? Do you remember this game? And if so, do you see some nice idea of how to gain advantage for white? Or is it just we can still castle? Maybe it's just castling. Maybe that's some good move.
So far, you've mentioned a lot of the candidate moves, and there's two more. There's two more,
okay.
which are the best ones. Basically, I'll just explain the other ones. If you castle, then they will take on e4 and attack the knight, and kind of have the upper hand here for Black. If you play knight d5 is a good attacking move. But this doesn't really prevent Black's idea from taking on e4. Although this is actually not bad. We could go for something like knight c7, knight g5, and then probably trade into an endgame, trade into a complicated queenless endgame. So this one is okay. Doesn't lose for white or anything. Queen c4 would probably not be ideal because it doesn't really attack anything, but at the same time, your king is now more exposed. So you would probably have to castle, and then the f2 pawn is always hanging. The knight is hanging. So it's a bit of a, like, it's still very complicated, but Black's pieces are just a little more coordinated if you look at them that way. They're all attacking something, but our rook is standing weird. The bishop is not where it needs to be. The knights, everything... it just doesn't really work out in the best way for white, although it is really complicated. So that's why I'm saying you've mentioned pretty much all of the candidate moves, but there's two more.
Two more. Can I find them? What else could there be? There's an immediate
Black is
threat
directly
of
targeting
taking.
the e4 pawn. So most of
Exactly.
them,
Exactly. So how can we prevent? I mean, of course, we could go e5. That's another. No, we cannot really.
we can.
We
It's actually
can.
the best move. The
E5,
thing
yeah.
is, the two like main defenses of that pawn um, would probably be either to play e5 or to take.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if we take, then everything is okay, of course. We can trade into this, but then we open up the f file for the rook, and that's not really something we wanted to do. So something like this, probably around equal material.
Wow.
But once again, that f file is opened up. Um, Black's pieces are coordinated. White's pieces are okay too, which is why I'm saying it's probably around equal. But the thing with e5 is that it's a really good, like not only tactical move, but also a positional move, because if you look at this pawn, Black actually wishes that that pawn wasn't there, because that would activate the rook, that would allow the bishop to come out to a better square, but this pawn here actually prevents that from happening. So whenever you kind of make that decision of whether to make a trade or not to make it, here's where he decided not to make it. But the reason why e5 is such a interesting move is because we're actually just giving up that pawn.
Yeah.
In the other variation, we traded it, and this is probably why you also thought against this move, because you didn't want to give it up. But after we give up the pawn here, you've also mentioned the long castle before, and we
What?
finally get to this position. Do you feel like the pawn sacrifice is worth it or not after looking at this line?
So what a game. Well, it's very good to castle for
It's
white.
yeah, we are finally.
And
I'm also very
maybe
relieved that white
maybe it
finally
is, yeah,
castled.
maybe it is worth it because only of this fact, because the king was just so vulnerable there. Too vulnerable after all.
Right.
So maybe
And
yes.
I do sometimes like once, as I've said, this pawn, I think it only does Black like a bad service
Hmm.
rather than like a good service here. So it is good to it does give white an advantage to find this e5 move. It is not an easy one to see, but but this is one of those, like, this is why I said it was like probably the most important point of the game,
Hmm.
because instead of holding on to that pawn, Gukesh decided to go for something that would let his pieces free and let them be active like this. So now we see that the bishop joins, all of the pieces are doing well, doing what they're supposed to do. After some trades followed, he plays bishop to e6, which was probably this was probably the mistake here.
Oh.
Um, so what would you play here? This is probably the last little tactic here of the game.
Oh, it's a tactic. Well, I thought about
Kind of.
yeah. Okay, so I thought about rook e1, but that's not really a tactic. So there.
No, maybe I shouldn't call it a tactic, but it's just once again, checks, captures, and threats,
Sure,
always what we
sure,
look
sure,
at.
sure. Now, I mean, what would happen? So we need to get. Yeah, there must be something with one of the bishops. What happens if we take on d6? The queen takes back, and then we could take on e6. The queen takes back, and nothing really changed.
It's an interesting one that you're mentioning it. I thought you might say it. Already whenever I'm like looking at a game and I'm like, oh, I should ask Arne a question here. And then I'm like, he's probably gonna go for Rook D6. So I'm already predicting which ones you're gonna make.
Yeah.
So Rook D6, at first I didn't look at it, and then I looked into it, and it was actually a pretty interesting idea. And after Queen B7 here, this is like another like key move. We're attacking here, and
Hmm.
it's
Oh
like
yeah.
harder to defend than it looks like. But basically, if Black finds this Queen to H6 check, he can check us and defend this at the same time.
Mm.
So something like this would be well, down in exchange, but the bishop pair is really strong. It's good, probably slightly better for white. So this would still be a really interesting thing to go for as white, actually. So Rook D6 is a nice idea, but there is something more forcing where we don't have to give up material.
Okie dokie. So what is that going to be? Is it just bishop takes g7?
Bishop takes g7
The king.
probably is not it because then they're going to take on f4 and then take this, and it looks
Uh,
relatively safe.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
You
That
will
was
win
my
back.
fault.
You will win back the knight, though. You will win back the knight, but then after bishop here, for example,
Dangerous.
your king is also in danger. The rook is in danger, and winning back the knight
Yeah,
will take a while.
that won't do the trick, unfortunately. So, come on, tactics.
It's not that big of a tactic, actually. It's
Okay, good.
just
Yeah, but like I have to find the right move. How about you at
just
home? Have you found out what it is here? Okay, I don't want to delay the show for too much longer. I will think about that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. Poof, that doesn't work.
all
That
of the
doesn't
ideas that
work.
we've mentioned before.
Ay, 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 ay. No, I'm sorry. I cannot find it right now.
Mhm. I'll show you. It's basically if you combine all of the ideas we've named before, that will be it.
Okay.
So the move is to take,
Yes.
queen takes, and h3. But don't feel too bad. Gukesh didn't play it either.
Okay.
He didn't find it either. So
So easy.
and after this,
So
just queen
simple.
b7.
Chess can be so simple. Yeah. Triple attack. Almost.
A
Double.
lot of attacks here. Um, rook is working, bishop is working, white is
Yeah.
basically winning. Of course, it will take a while to like, it's not like immediate checkmate or
Of
anything,
course.
but just really good position, winning back the pawn,
Hmm.
everything is under attack. So something like this um, would be evaluated as winning. Maybe he evaluated it
I
differently, or
thought
he
about
thought that this was better. He
the.
played h3 immediately.
Okay.
And black could have defended if he had taken the knight. So he had to
Didn't see.
recognize that this bishop was more important than this bishop
Mm-hmm.
and had to trade it. And something like this would be more or less okay for black. But he also didn't notice it or didn't consider that this was too dangerous and played bishop e5, after which white just simply took and ended up being up a piece. I know it looks very simple now,
Mm-hmm.
but of course, there's still something to play for. Gukesh is up a piece here already. How do you think you would be confident in winning this as white?
No.
Well, we
Never.
know that winning a one game is one of the hardest things in chess, right?
Yeah.
It's so difficult, especially when you're up material. There's so much pressure on you to, or you put the pressure on yourself to actually get it to a winning position. But here he had a piece up, so I think he was feeling good. And the thing, just there's not really much else like tactics to look at here. But what I find interesting is that he didn't really try to go for a simplification. He didn't try to trade rooks or trade queens or anything, but he recognized that his advantage here is actually the opponent's weak king. So
Mm-hmm.
he just went directly for the king attack. He went for the counter attack because he realized that this bishop is has the most advantage when it's his queen, his rook, and the bishop combined are going to be good against the weakened king. And he did end up winning it like this. So
Ooh.
even without any simplifications, he's actually just threatening checkmate. So it's an interesting way to uh,
Oh,
to
yeah.
to finish it off. But of course, the most tactical and the most things that we looked at were in the middle game. The middle game is always the most interesting part. But that was the game. I thought it featured a very interesting opening move with Rook G1, because that's the reason why I remembered this game.
Yeah.
And then a middle game filled with a lot of tactics.
If I make a short little advice to everybody who has Fritz 19 too, because what I have done to sharpen my end games a little bit is to play certain positions which I had over the board by playing blitz or something in end games. For example, like this one, and to be white and play against the engine and set the level of the white engine a bit stronger. Of course, you can play against one of the characters,
Maybe
and
this
so they,
one,
yeah,
because
exactly.
the
Maybe
other
like,
one mate is coming up.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe
yeah. No,
this
no,
one.
no. This is the one I meant. Exactly
Yeah.
this one. If you can copy this position, which is super easy, you just copy the FEN code, you open Fritz 19, and then you paste, and this position will be pasted in the new board which you open, and then you play as white, and you try to win this as white. It's going to be, yeah,
Difficult.
I did it a couple of times, but it is quite depressing
Or
when
you
you
could set
cannot
up like
win.
a rook endgame where you're up a pawn or up 2 pawns and try to win
Exactly.
that
This is
that you know
exactly
is
what I
winning,
did.
but it's
Yes.
hard.
Yeah, and it's fun, it's interesting, and I learned a couple of new things by doing that. Yeah, but this game is absolutely crazy. This is one of those games which, yeah, where your heart is boiling, your blood is boiling the whole game, and there's so many options. So must have been fun to play something like this.
Yeah, and we will wait for their rematch in this year's Tata Steel.
All right, thank you, Svitlana. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We see each other soon enough. Bye bye.